Tonight, we drift into the quiet world beneath the surface of the sea, where light fades into dusky blues and the hum of the world above becomes a distant memory. In these still waters, far below the restless waves, we begin a slow journey into the history of machines built to vanish into silence. Their story begins not with the sleek nuclear vessels of today, but with the uncertain calm that settled over the world at the end of the Second World War, when nations looked to the oceans for a new kind of protection. As the dust of conflict settled, the oceans held their own secrets. Sunken hulls, abandoned bases, fragments of technology scattered across distant coasts, and among them, a single breakthrough that changed everything. The German type Von submarine, captured almost intact by the Allies, lay quietly in dry docks and naval yards, its steel still echoing with the war that had created it. Engineers from the United States, the Soviet Union, and the United Kingdom walked slowly around those cold, unfamiliar shapes, realizing that they were standing before something decades ahead of anything they had built themselves. You can imagine the quiet rooms where these discoveries unfolded. Charts unrolled across long tables, engineers leaning close to study battery arrays, hydrodynamic hull curves traced gently with fingertips, and propulsion systems that seemed to whisper possibilities. The war was over, but the rivalry that followed, the long, steady competition for technological advantage, was just beginning. And in those first months of uneasy peace, each country carried home its own captured submarine, like a puzzle box, whose pieces had to be understood before anyone else solved them. These vessels were faster underwater than on the surface, a reversal of every submarine before them. Their smooth, elongated hulls slipped through water with unprecedented grace, and their electric power allowed them to remain submerged for long stretches, creating a kind of vanished presence that navies had never known. Many historians believed that this single design laid the foundation for the modern submarine age. But in this story, we will not follow the currents of rivalry or conflict. Instead, we will drift gently along the quieter thread. How these ideas, refined over decades, led to the creation of nuclear-powered submarines, vessels that could disappear beneath the ocean for months, moving silently in the deep, maintaining a strange and peaceful equilibrium above. Tonight, as we begin this journey, we travel not through tension or urgency, but through curiosity. We follow the faint glow of history beneath the waves, where engineering met imagination, and where the world's quietest guardians slowly took shape. As we drift farther into this story, the world above enters the early years of the Cold War. The oceans, once simple borders, begin to feel like vast, quiet spaces where technology could gently reshape global balance. In shipyards and research rooms, the captured German designs were studied with patient attention, their smooth hulls and hidden mechanisms offering clues that would guide decades of innovation. These blueprints did not promise dominance or speed, but something subtler, a way for submarines to truly belong beneath the waves rather than merely visit them. In the United States, This realization stirred a quiet kind of ambition. Engineers wondered what might happen if a submarine could slip free from the limits of diesel engines and fragile batteries. What if it never needed to rise for breath? Early improvements, larger batteries, better snorkels, helped, yet they still tethered submarines to the rhythm of the surface. Many believed a deeper transformation was possible, a design that could drift in the deep for weeks, then months, with a calm independence no vessel had ever known. Across the ocean, the Soviet Union studied the same captured forms, tracing the same lines of possibility. Their engineers imagined vessels gliding through Arctic waters in long, silent arcs, unseen beneath drifting ice. Though neither nation spoke openly about it, a quiet race had begun. Breakthroughs appeared like gentle ripples, each answered by another, forming a slow, steady exchange of ideas that shaped the early submarine age. It was during this period that the idea of nuclear propulsion surfaced with a quiet inevitability. Scientists already understood how the energy inside an atom could be controlled, and naval engineers realized that this same energy could heat water into high-pressure steam, driving turbines without ever drawing air from the surface. A submarine powered this way, many believed, would not simply be an improvement. It would be a different kind of presence in the ocean altogether. With nuclear propulsion, a vessel could remain underwater for extraordinary lengths of time. No more surfacing every few days. No more noisy snorkel mast. Instead, the submarine could move slowly and steadily beneath the waves, wrapped in the cool pressure of the deep, its path almost meditative. Its endurance would offer something new to the world above, a form of deterrence built not on threat, but on quiet certainty. As designers refined their early sketches, a new era of undersea travel began to take shape. The oceans were about to welcome vessels that could disappear for months, relying on endurance rather than speed, and on silence rather than visibility. And in that silence, the foundations of modern nuclear submarines and the stability they would one day help support were beginning to emerge. Far beneath the surface of this history, another quiet transformation was taking shape. In the United States, a small group of scientists and naval officers began exploring how nuclear power might free submarines from the limits of air and fuel. At the center of this effort stood Hyman Rickover, a determined and meticulous officer whose persistence gently pushed the idea from possibility into reality. He believed a submarine could carry a reactor small enough to fit inside its hull, yet powerful enough to drive it through the deep for months without surfacing. Early reactor work unfolded in quiet test facilities, where thick shielding and careful instruments guided each experiment. The science itself was intricate, but the principle was soothingly simple. The heat of controlled fission would create steam, and that steam would turn turbines just as it did in power plants on land. Inside a submarine, though, this process would offer something entirely new, movement that did not depend on the shifting conditions of the surface. Engineers watched their gauges with calm satisfaction as the first test systems behaved predictably, showing that the idea could truly work. At the same time, naval thinkers reconsidered how a submarine might travel underwater if it no longer needed to rise for air. Oceanographers spoke softly about thermoclines, the colder layers of water that bent sound and offered natural concealment. A nuclear submarine, able to remain submerged indefinitely, could slip into these layers and move with a quiet grace, almost becoming part of the ocean itself. This endurance hinted at a new form of stability, one shaped not by force, but by the simple reassurance that such a vessel could always be present, even if unseen. Meanwhile, design teams refined the first hulls meant to house a reactor safely. They experimented with new layouts, new safety barriers, and new protocols for crew training. Engineers learned how to shield radiation, how to isolate the reactor from living spaces, and how to build redundant systems that would protect the vessel even in the pressure of the deep. Each solved problem brought a gentle sense of progress, as though the submarine's future presence under the sea was slowly becoming inevitable. From these efforts emerged the plans for the world's first nuclear submarine, Nautilus. Its name, drawn from Jules Verne's imagined vessel, carried a quiet sense of curiosity rather than conquest. Workers in shipyards shaped steel plates under soft lights, building spaces that would soon travel through waters no submarine had crossed without needing to surface. As the hull took form, the world stood on the edge of a new era, one where submarines would no longer be limited by breath or battery, but could drift through the deep with calm, unbroken endurance. When the Nautilus finally touched the water, it carried a quiet sense of promise. Its reactor room, carefully shielded and humming with a gentle warmth, replaced the noise and fumes of diesel engines with a steady, lasting heartbeat. For the first time, a submarine could move without depending on the surface for air or fuel. To the sailors who stepped aboard during its early days, the vessel felt less like a weapon and more like a doorway into a calmer, more enduring chapter of undersea travel. Sea trials began slowly. Engineers listened for vibrations that might reveal hidden flaws, watched gauges as the reactor powered the vessel forward, and studied how heat flowed through turbines and condensers. Every test brought a sense of careful progress. The Nautilus slipped into deeper waters, exploring limits no submarine had reached before. Its motion was smooth, almost contemplative, as though the ship itself were discovering how to live beneath the sea. In January 1955, a simple message marked the turning point: underway on nuclear power. The phrase was brief, but it signaled a profound shift. Submarines were no longer tethered to the rhythms of daylight and surface air. Now they could travel continuously, with no need to rise unless the crew wished to. Oceans that once felt confining became vast, uninterrupted spaces. Voyages that once took days could now be measured in long, quiet stretches that blended into one another. The Nautilus soon demonstrated its unique endurance. It crossed oceans, traveled beneath drifting Arctic ice, and moved through cold waters that once discouraged long patrols. To many observers, these journeys carried strategic meaning. A vessel that could remain hidden for months created a new form of stability, one based on the certainty that such a submarine could appear almost anywhere without warning or trace. It was not a tool of aggression, but a quiet reassurance that balanced rivalries in a changing world. Other nations took careful note. The Soviet Union accelerated its own nuclear submarine designs, drawing inspiration from the same captured German technology and adapting it for their vast northern waters. The United Kingdom followed as well, seeking a way to maintain both national independence and participation in a broader alliance of nuclear deterrence. Together, these efforts formed the early outlines of a global undersea network. Life aboard these early nuclear submarines had a gentle, steady rhythm. Sailors described the hum of machinery, the faint shifting of ballast, and the soft creak of steel adjusting to pressure. Inside the hull, time felt different, slower, quieter, shaped by routines that guided the crew through long periods without seeing the sun. Though the world above continued to change, the ocean held a stillness that settled deeply into every patrol, offering a sense of calm that contrasted with the vessel's immense responsibility. As nuclear submarines matured, their purpose began to shift toward something both strategic and strangely peaceful. The greatest change came with the development of ballistic missile submarines, vessels designed not to seek battles, but to prevent them. These submarines carried missiles that everyone hoped would never be used. Their existence created a delicate balance, one built not on threats spoken aloud, but on the steady, unseen presence of ships drifting far beneath the sea. These submarines behaved differently from the fast, agile attack submarines that shared the oceans with it. It did not chase or flee. It chose remote waters where currents moved gently and sound traveled unpredictably. Here, deep in the quiet layers of the ocean, it settled into long patrols that sometimes stretched for months. The crew followed routines shaped by stillness, monitoring systems, making small course adjustments, listening for anything unusual in the vast surrounding silence. These vessels soon became one of the most stabilizing elements of the Cold War. Land-based missiles could be surveilled and aircraft could be tracked, but a submarine hidden in the deep existed in a place no satellite could reliably observe. As long as it remained undetected, it offered a calm but unwavering certainty. No first strike could remove the ability to respond. Life aboard these submarines had its own rhythm. Without sunlight or weather, days blended gently into one another. Clocks marked the passing hours, though the ocean cared little for them. The temperature remained steady, the air carefully filtered and quiet, and the soft hum of equipment became a kind of constant companion. Far from communities and coastlines, sailors lived in a world shaped by routine, calm professionalism, and the unspoken understanding that their presence contributed to global stability. Even so, these ships were deeply human places. Messages from home arrived in small bundles during limited communication windows. Quiet celebrations marked holidays and birthdays. Meals offered structure and small rituals. A cup of coffee at the same hour, a shared conversation in the mess, a brief pause by a porthole sensor screen helped anchor time. Beneath it all was the awareness that their vessel formed a silent thread in a vast tapestry of international balance. By the late 20th century, ballistic missile submarines had become central pillars of deterrence for several nations. They moved through icy Arctic waters, warm tropical seas, and the wide, deep basins of the Pacific. Some traveled quickly when necessary, but most adopted a slower, almost meditative rhythm. Their mission relied not on speed or confrontation, but on endurance and invisibility, qualities that turned the ocean into a quiet sanctuary where peace was preserved through presence rather than conflict. As submarine technology advanced, the changes appeared gradual, almost quiet, yet each one deepened the vessel's connection to the sea. Engineers refined hull shapes so they slipped more smoothly through water, softening turbulence and noise. Propellers evolved into broad, carefully curved designs that turned slowly, producing fewer vibrations. Inside the hull, sound-dampening materials lined machinery spaces, absorbing the small echoes that once carried through the ocean. The goal was simple: to let the submarine blend gently into the deep. Modern nuclear submarines became intricate, self-contained environments where every system supported life far from the surface. Air was continuously purified, water recycled, and temperature kept steady. Crews could remain submerged for months, their daily rhythms becoming steady and predictable. In these long stretches underwater, endurance was not only a capability, but a quiet part of life. Navigation in the deep relied on patience and skill. Without GPS signals or the guiding horizon, submariners used sonar, inertial navigation, and the subtle cues of the sea floor. Sound pulses drifted outward, touching underwater ridges and returning with soft echoes. Experienced operators learned to hear patterns in those echoes, distinguishing the contour of a distant shelf from the slow movement of marine life. Navigation became a kind of listening, a quiet dialogue between the vessel and the ocean. Communication with the world above was deliberately limited. To remain hidden, submarines avoided sending signals unless necessary. When messages arrived, they often came through very low-frequency transmissions that passed slowly through seawater. Sometimes only a few characters appeared at a time, yet these short notes carried weight. A change in orders, a brief update from home, a confirmation that the wider world continued on. These small connections reminded the crew that the surface still existed, even when they could not see it. Life on board followed a calm rhythm shaped by watches, routines, and shared responsibility. Sleeping quarters were small, corridors narrow, and spaces carefully organized, yet the environment felt ordered and familiar. Crew members learned one another's habits, forming quiet bonds that helped steady the long days away from sunlight. Meals provided structure, conversations offered comfort, and simple rituals gave shape to time that otherwise flowed without distinction. Though technology continued to advance, the nature of undersea life remained constant. The ocean encouraged a slower pace, inviting focus and reflection. Submariners often spoke of the stillness of the deep, a sense that time expanded softly around them. Within that stillness, the purpose of their mission, maintaining stability through presence, felt both immense and calm. As we move deeper into the story, the relationship between submarines and the ocean becomes more intimate. Designers learned early that the sea could not be forced. It had to be understood. Pressure increased gently but relentlessly with depth. Sound traveled in curved paths, and light faded soon after entering the water. These natural laws shaped every line of a submarine's hull, guiding engineers toward forms that balanced strength with grace. The deep brought challenges that required quiet ingenuity. Pressure at depth could crush an unprepared hull, so submarines were built from specialized steels that flexed slightly under load. Internal frames supported the vessel like ribs in a living creature, spreading forces evenly across the structure. Engineers learned that instead of resisting the ocean outright, the submarine had to move with it, adjusting to changes in depth and temperature with patience. Thermoclines, layers where warm water rested above cooler, denser water, became natural hiding places. These layers bent sound in gentle arcs, creating pockets where a submarine could drift with reduced chance of detection. Crews studied charts showing how these layers shifted with seasons and currents, choosing routes that allowed them to glide through the deep with quiet confidence. These underwater corridors became as familiar to submariners as mountain passes are to travelers on land. Sonar served as the vessel's sense of hearing. Passive sonar listened for faint vibrations from distant machinery or marine life, revealing subtle shifts in the surrounding world. Active sonar, used sparingly, sent pulses outward that returned with echoes describing the shapes of underwater terrain. Skilled operators could interpret these echoes with remarkable precision, hearing in them the outline of a valley, the slope of a ridge, or the slow passage of a whale. Encounters with marine life offered moments of calm connection. Dolphins sometimes traced the submarine's path, letting curiosity guide their movements. Whales passed overhead, their calls reverberating through steel with a deep, resonant clarity. Even the distant crack of shifting ice above polar waters could be felt in the hull like a subtle tremor. These sounds reminded crews that they traveled through a world older and larger than any mission. Through all this, a submarine's purpose remained steady. It moved carefully, not to disturb the ocean, but to coexist with it. Its silence served not only as a tactical advantage, but as a gesture of respect for the environment it depended on. And as crews learned to navigate these depths, they became part of a quiet exchange between human ingenuity and the natural world. A conversation carried out in pressure, darkness, and the gentle language of sound. As nuclear submarines expanded their range, commanders discovered that the ocean itself shaped every patrol as much as technology did. Vast basins, steep underwater ridges, and quiet valleys formed natural hiding places where sound behaved unpredictably. Oceanographers traced these features with patient care, noting where currents softened noise and where layers of warm and cold water bent sound in gentle arcs. These findings offered submarines a way to move through the deep with both confidence and subtlety. Patrol areas were chosen slowly and deliberately. A submarine might travel far from shipping lanes before settling into a calm region where the water pressed evenly around its hull. Once there, it adjusted buoyancy until it floated in near-perfect balance, drifting with only the smallest movements of machinery. In these secluded spaces, the vessel almost disappeared, becoming one more presence in a landscape defined by darkness and pressure. Life in these quiet regions felt different from life near the surface. Storms could rage thousands of feet above without disturbing the stillness below. Light never filtered down, and sound arrived softened by distance. Inside the submarine, the passage of time grew gentle. Watches changed, equipment was checked, and the steady hum of the reactor shaped the rhythm of each day. Crews often describe these long stretches as peaceful, despite the vessel's solemn mission. Scientific understanding grew alongside operational needs. Engineers experimented with new hull coatings inspired by marine animals, hoping to reduce the vessel's acoustic footprint. Researchers studied how sound traveled around schools of fish or along sloping sea floors, helping refine sonar techniques. These efforts were not driven solely by strategy. Many arose from curiosity about how technology could coexist quietly with the natural world. Occasionally, a submarine encountered traces of human activity even in remote waters. The faint thrum of a distant propeller, the echo of a passing ship, or the subtle disturbance of fishing equipment. But most days unfolded in near solitude, broken only by the soft sounds of marine life. Dolphins sometimes lingered near the hull, and whales passed by with calls that vibrated through steel like distant bells. Through these long patrols, submarines became quiet observers of the planet's hidden landscapes. They witnessed the slow drift of cold currents, the movement of deep-sea creatures, and the subtle shifts of underwater seasons. Though their mission remained strategic, crews carried with them a quiet respect for the deep. In returning to the same regions year after year, submarines formed a calm relationship with the ocean, shaped by patience, routine, and the steady embrace of the water that surrounded them. Life aboard a nuclear submarine settled into a rhythm shaped by routine and the unchanging environment of the deep. Narrow passageways and softly lit rooms became familiar spaces where each day unfolded with gentle predictability. Crews rotated through watches, performing tasks with quiet discipline. Sleep followed scheduled hours rather than daylight, and meals appeared at regular intervals that helped anchor the passing time. Within this enclosed world, small habits grew into comforting rituals. The submarine became a floating community. Friendships formed quickly as crew members worked together in close quarters, relying on one another for both safety and companionship. Conversations drifted through the mess deck, where shared meals offered warmth and connection. Simple gestures, a borrowed book, a shared joke, a cup of coffee passed during a late watch, helped ease the long days beneath the surface. Despite the calm, the vessel demanded constant attention. Reactor operators monitored temperatures and pressures with practiced focus. Sonar technicians listened for faint echoes that revealed the shape of the surrounding sea. Navigation teams calculated the submarine's position without the help of stars or satellites. Every task, even those performed countless times before, carried a sense of purpose. The crew understood that their collective steadiness allowed the vessel to remain safe and unseen. Messages from home arrived rarely, but carried deep meaning. A short greeting or brief update from family could brighten an entire day. Submariners often read these notes slowly, letting each line settle into the quiet atmosphere of the ship. Even a few words helped bridge the distance between the deep and the world above, reminding sailors that life on the surface continued in its familiar way. Recreation offered small moments of relief. Some crew members read or listened to music. Others exercised in compact spaces or wrote letters for the next opportunity to send them. The sound of laughter occasionally filled the narrow corridors, offering a gentle contrast to the mechanical hum of the submarine. These moments helped balance the long hours of focus and responsibility. When a patrol neared its end, subtle signs appeared, changing currents, rising temperatures, and the faint impression of light filtering through higher layers of water. The submarine's ascent marked a quiet transition back to the world above. Soon, sailors would step onto land, greeted by open skies and familiar voices. Yet many carried with them a lasting memory of the deep, the steady, peaceful routine that shaped their days beneath the waves, and the calm sense of purpose that guided every moment below. As submarine technology continued to mature, new generations of vessels emerged with a focus on both capability and quiet refinement. Reactors became more efficient, allowing longer patrols with less noise and fewer mechanical vibrations. Hulls were shaped with increasing precision, reducing turbulence, and letting submarines move with a smoothness that felt almost natural. Each improvement represented years of steady research and careful experimentation. Stealth grew into a defining characteristic. Engineers examined every component that produced sound, from pumps to gears, adjusting designs to soften their presence in the water. New hull coatings absorbed vibrations and disguised acoustic reflections. These changes were not made to create invisibility, but to allow submarines to exist gently within the acoustic landscape of the deep. In many ways, the ocean became a partner in their design. Life inside the vessel improved as well. Living spaces gained softer lighting, cleaner air, and quieter ventilation systems. Though still compact, these areas offered a sense of comfort needed for months-long patrols. Recreational spaces allowed sailors to read, rest, or exercise, and small conveniences, better mattresses, warmer lighting, reduced noise, helped make the environment feel more livable. Training evolved to match the complexity of modern systems. Crews practiced handling unexpected scenarios, learning to respond calmly to changes in depth, sonar contacts, or mechanical fluctuations. These exercises strengthened teamwork and built confidence, reminding sailors that every decision carried weight in the quiet isolation of the deep. Trust among the crew became essential, forming the backbone of undersea operations. Submarines also diversified their missions. Some focused on deterrence, drifting through distant waters with quiet purpose. Others gathered information, mapped ocean floors, or monitored remote regions. A few were built for rapid response, able to move swiftly when needed. Together, these vessels formed a network of undersea capability that stretched across the world's oceans. Despite all advances, submariners continued to speak of the sea with respect. The deep remained powerful, unpredictable, and ancient. Even the most advanced vessel felt small in its presence. Yet this humility shaped the submarine's role, a guardian that relied not on force, but on patience, endurance, and the quiet stability offered by the ocean itself. As the modern era unfolded, the missions of nuclear submarines expanded into roles that revealed new layers of the ocean's quiet world. Many patrols took submarines through remote regions where few ships traveled. Here, the sea floor rose and fell in slow, sweeping arcs, shaped by ancient volcanic ridges and deep trenches. The vessel moved above these features with steady calm, its sensors tracing outlines of terrain unseen by almost anyone on the surface. Scientific instruments on board quietly collected information. Temperature shifts hinted at large underwater currents, while tiny changes in salinity revealed the movement of faraway waters. At times, the submarine passed through regions filled with marine life. Clouds of small fish shimmered in darkness as sonar pulses touched them. The calls of distant whales arrived as long, resonant vibrations that filled the hull like soft, rolling thunder. These sounds reminded sailors that the deep was not empty, but alive with steady, ancient rhythms. Crews grew accustomed to these moments, learning to distinguish the tones of nature from the signatures of human activity. A distant ship's propeller created a rhythmic beat. An undersea cable produced faint harmonics. Even shifting ice far above the Arctic traveled through the water as gentle crackling like distant branches snapping in a winter forest. These sounds shaped the atmosphere aboard the vessel, creating a soundscape that was both calming and quietly informative. Though the submarine moved with purpose, it did so with patience. Small course changes helped it avoid seamounts or follow deep channels that offered acoustic shelter. The ship's pace remained slow and deliberate, allowing senses to gather the subtle details needed to understand the environment. Many submariners describe this part of the mission as one of the most peaceful. Hours spent observing the hidden world around them, guided only by the hum of machinery and the steady pulse of sonar returns. During long patrols, these observations became part of the crew's routine, shared in quiet conversations or noted in logs. Some sailors found comfort in recognizing familiar patterns, the echo of a returning pulse that revealed a sloping ridge, the steady sound of a nearby current, the soft chorus of marine life passing close by. Even though the submarine served a strategic purpose, these moments of connection with the deep gave the mission a gentle, reflective quality. When the vessel eventually altered its depth or direction, the environment changed with it. Pressure shifted, temperatures cooled or warmed, and sound behaved differently. Each new layer of the ocean carried its own personality, and through these shifts, the submarine remained steady, moving like a quiet traveler in a vast underwater world, present, observant, and respectful of the ancient sea that surrounded it. As we drift further into this story, it becomes clear that nuclear submarines shape not only military strategy, but also our understanding of the ocean itself. Many of the earliest maps of undersea mountains, trenches, and plains were refined by submarines moving slowly across the world's basins. Their sensors trace the contours of the deep with remarkable sensitivity, revealing features that had long remained hidden beneath layers of darkness and pressure. Crews grew familiar with these landscapes in their own quiet way. A deep trench appeared on sonar as a sudden drop in echoes, while a broad plateau returned a gentle, even pattern. Seamounts rose like silent towers from the sea floor, sometimes surprising the crew with echoes that arrived sooner than expected. Over time, submariners developed a sense of the terrain around them, much like travelers who learn to read the shape of distant hills. This intimate connection with the deep inspired advances in ocean science. Data collected during patrols helped researchers study how sound traveled through different layers of water, how currents shifted with the seasons, and how temperature affected marine life. Although the submarine's mission remained strategic, its journey created opportunities to understand the planet in new ways. Some discoveries emerged quietly, appearing first as small notes in a patrol log before becoming valuable insights for oceanographers. Inside the vessel, life followed its steady rhythm. The crew maintained equipment, monitored the reactor, and trusted the instruments that guided them through regions unseen by human eyes. Even routine tasks carried a sense of partnership with the environment. Adjusting depth meant feeling pressure change subtly through the hull. Turning toward a new heading meant listening for how currents shifted along the vessel's sides. Every movement created a response from the sea. Occasionally, The submarine reached areas where underwater life was especially active. Sonar operators heard the clicking patterns of dolphins, the low calls of whales, or the soft scatter of fish moving in groups. These sounds traveled through the vessel with clarity, reminding the crew that even in remote waters, they were surrounded by ancient, living ecosystems. Many sailors describe these moments as grounding, offering a sense of connection that softened the isolation of long patrols. Through these experiences, submariners gained not only technical skill, but a deeper appreciation for the ocean's vastness. The deep was not simply a place to pass through, it was a world with its own currents, moods, and inhabitants. And as submarines continued to travel these paths, they carried forward a quiet understanding that their presence in the deep required both care and respect, qualities that shaped every voyage beneath the waves. As the Cold War progressed, nuclear submarines took on a steadier role in maintaining international stability. Their presence beneath the sea became part of a delicate balance that relied on silence, endurance, and constant readiness. Nations understood that a submarine hidden in the deep could not be easily targeted or disabled. This quiet reliability helped prevent sudden escalations, offering a calming influence in moments of uncertainty. Patrols were planned months in advance, yet each one unfolded differently. Some followed well-known routes through deep basins. Others navigated complex terrain where underwater ridges and channels required careful attention. The crew adapted to each environment with slow, deliberate movements. Every course change was considered thoughtfully, guided by sonar, navigation charts, and the steady instincts of experienced submariners. During these patrols, communication with the surface remained sparse. Small bursts of information arrived through low-frequency messages, offering brief updates from home or quiet instructions from command. These moments connected the vessel to the broader world, yet they never disturbed the calm routine below. Between messages, the submarine traveled in near solitude, guided by sensors and the familiar hum of machinery. Inside the hull, daily life continued with gentle predictability. Watches rotated, equipment was maintained, and the crew shared meals in the softly lit mess deck. Conversations drifted between stories from past patrols and quiet reflections on home. In this environment, bonds formed naturally. The sense of purpose that united the crew helped ease the isolation of life beneath the waves. Occasionally, the submarine encountered signs of other vessels moving through distant waters. A faint echo returned from a ship far above, or a subtle acoustic signature suggested another submarine passing silently nearby. These moments reminded crews that they were part of a larger equilibrium, one in which nations relied on each other's discipline to maintain peace. The deep, with its vastness and quiet, provided a setting where this balance could endure. Through the decades, submarines proved their value not through action, but through presence. Their steady patrols reassured allies, discouraged impulsive decisions, and offered a constant reminder that stability depended on measured choices. Beneath the waves, far from attention, they became silent guardians of a fragile peace, vessels whose greatest strength lay not in force, but in their ability to remain unseen, patient, and always prepared. As technology advanced into the late 20th century, nuclear submarines entered a new period of refinement. Improved materials allowed hulls to reach greater depths, while more efficient reactors extended patrols with quieter operation. Yet, despite these engineering achievements, the core philosophy remained unchanged: to move softly through the ocean, relying on patience rather than speed. The submarine's power came not from its might, but from its silence. Inside the vessel, digital systems gradually replaced older mechanical instruments. New sonar arrays offered finer detail, revealing subtle patterns in the surrounding water. Navigation became more precise, though it still relied on the timeless rhythm of listening and interpreting echoes. Even with modern equipment, submariners understood that the ocean often revealed itself slowly, as if offering its secrets only to those willing to wait. Training adapted alongside these innovations. Crews practiced responding to unusual sounds, shifts in pressure, or unexpected changes in the environment. Simulated scenarios encouraged calm decision-making, reinforcing the importance of steady teamwork. With each patrol, sailors became more attuned to the vessel's gentle cues: the soft rise in temperature near certain currents, the slight shift in pitch when ballast adjusted, the faint tremor of distant storms. Life aboard continued in its familiar measured rhythm. Compartments remained compact, but lighting grew warmer and noise levels decreased. These small improvements softened the long weeks below the surface, creating a sense of comfort that supported the crew's well-being. Recreational moments, reading, conversation, quiet games became essential threads that tied the days together. Even brief pauses for reflection helped maintain a calm and centered atmosphere. Outside the hull, the ocean offered a world of constant motion. Migrating animals passed along ancient routes, their calls traveling for miles. Plankton drifted in slow, shimmering clouds. The sea floor, though unseen, shaped patterns in the currents that subtly touched the vessel. Submarines moved through these environments not as intruders, but as quiet observers tracing paths shaped by nature's design. Strategically, these submarines continued to anchor a fragile balance. Their presence deterred sudden change, encouraging diplomacy over conflict. They could travel through distant regions without being detected, providing reassurance that global stability was supported even in uncertain times. And through it all, the ocean remained both guardian and guide, holding each vessel in its vast, dark expanse as it carried out its silent role beneath the waves. In the decades that followed, nuclear submarines became woven into the daily fabric of global security. Their patrols continued quietly, unnoticed by most people on the surface. These missions required precise coordination and calm discipline, Yet they unfolded with a kind of tranquil predictability. Crews prepared carefully before each departure, reviewing routes, studying ocean conditions, and strengthening the routines that would guide them through months at sea. Once submerged, the vessel settled into its familiar rhythm. Watches rotated through the day, each crew member performing tasks with practiced attention. Reactor teams monitored the gentle flow of power. Sonar technicians listened for echoes that revealed the character of surrounding waters. Navigation crews traced the submarine's progress across unseen landscapes. Every action, no matter how small, contributed to the vessel's quiet endurance. Although the submarine moved alone, it remained connected to a wider network. Occasionally, low-frequency signals reached the hull, carrying short instructions or quiet reassurances from command. These messages reminded the crew that their work supported a broader purpose, forming part of an intricate balance maintained across oceans. In return, the submarine sent brief updates, exchanged sparingly to preserve its silence. Life on board remained shaped by small rituals. Meals brought the crew together, offering warmth and a sense of normalcy. Conversations drifted between shared memories, observations about the mission, and quiet hopes for home. Sailors found comfort in familiar routines, a book revisited, a cup of coffee prepared the same way, a brief pause in the narrow corridor to exchange a nod with a passing shipmate. These moments softened the isolation and helped anchor the long patrols. Sometimes the submarine traveled through regions filled with natural wonder. Sonar revealed distant whale songs echoing through the deep. Thermal layers shifted around the hull like invisible curtains. Even small changes, water cooling by a fraction, a faint vibration from the sea floor, offered clues about the vast world outside. Crew members often reflected on how little of this environment humanity truly saw, and how unique it was to travel through it. By the time a patrol ended, the crew had often grown closer, bound by shared responsibility, and the quiet trust that formed during months beneath the waves. As the submarine rose toward lighter waters near home, a gentle anticipation filled the ship. Soon, the crew would step onto land again. Yet many carried with them a sense of gratitude for the deep, the stillness, the rhythm, and the enduring calm that shaped their time below. As the 21st century began, nuclear submarines entered a period of renewed purpose. Advances in technology broadened their capabilities while preserving the quiet endurance that defined them. Modern reactors became more efficient and required less maintenance, allowing vessels to remain at sea for longer periods with even greater reliability. Improved propulsion reduced noise further, enabling submarines to move through the deep with remarkable subtlety. Inside the hull, digital systems enhanced navigation and communication, though they never replaced the steady judgment of experienced crews. Sonar arrays expanded to capture wider ranges of sound, helping sailors understand the shifting patterns of the ocean. Computer-assisted analysis supported decision-making, yet submariners continued to value the human ability to interpret faint echoes and subtle cues with intuition shaped by years of training. Strategically, submarines adapted to an evolving world. Their missions extended beyond deterrence to include surveillance, research, and support for broader naval operations. Some vessels observed remote regions, tracking currents, monitoring environmental changes, or mapping undersea features with quiet precision. Others provided a stable presence during periods of uncertainty, offering reassurance through their steady patrols. Despite these expanded roles, their fundamental purpose remained rooted in maintaining calm stability beneath the waves. Life aboard continued to follow familiar patterns. Crews balanced advanced technology with the same timeless routines that had guided submariners for generations. Watches rotated, machinery hummed gently, and shared spaces filled with quiet conversation. Even with modern comforts, the essence of undersea living remained unchanged. A reliance on cooperation, trust, and the steady rhythm of daily tasks. Occasionally, the ocean offered unexpected moments. Sonar detected distant volcanic activity or the gentle rumble of underwater earthquakes. Migrating whales appeared as sweeping arcs on screens, their calls passing through the hull with haunting beauty. These encounters reminded the crew that the deep was still largely unknown, holding mysteries that even modern vessels could only glimpse. Through all these developments, the relationship between submarines and the ocean remained one of respect. The deep continued to shape every journey, influencing decisions large and small. And as submarines carried out their long patrols, they became quiet witnesses to the changing world. Vessels guided by purpose, patience, and the enduring calm of the sea surrounding them. As submarine fleets expanded across different nations, each country developed its own traditions, practices, and quiet philosophies about life beneath the waves. The United States emphasized long-range patrols that spanned wide ocean basins. The United Kingdom refined smaller, tightly coordinated operations. Russia followed routes shaped by the cold northern seas, navigating under drifting ice and through deep Arctic passages. Despite these differences, the submariners of each nation shared a familiar bond formed by time spent in the deep. Crews spoke similar languages of quiet professionalism. Reactor teams everywhere listened for the same subtle signs of balance. Sonar operators tuned their ears to the same faint echoes drifting through the water. Navigators across the world studied charts of the same sea floors, learning how hidden ridges shape the paths of sound. These shared experiences created a sense of unity among people who would never meet, tied together by the ocean itself. Though their missions differed, submarines around the world moved with similar patience. Nations understood that these vessels were not symbols of aggression, but instruments of stability, meant to prevent sudden shifts in global balance. Their presence beneath the sea discouraged impulsive actions and encouraged careful decision-making. Many strategists believe this silent cooperation among adversaries helped avoid crises during tense periods. Life aboard, too, carried familiar qualities. Whether an American crew shared a meal of powdered eggs or a Russian crew brewed tea in a small galley, the rituals brought comfort and structure. Letters from home arrived with the same quiet joy. Stories circulated through compartments, turning long patrols into shared memories. Even small details, the hum of ventilation, the creak of the hull, the soft vibration of a distant current, became part of a universal vocabulary understood by submariners everywhere. Occasionally, vessels from different nations crossed paths unknowingly, separated by miles of water, but connected by the same deep environment. One submarine might detect a faint, distant signature and adjust course slightly, giving the other vessel space. These gentle maneuvers reflected a mutual respect carried by crews who understood the responsibility of traveling unseen. The ocean allowed room for all, provided that each vessel listened carefully and moved thoughtfully. Across continents, submarine veterans later described similar impressions: the quiet beauty of the deep, the way time softened in the absence of sunlight, the calming routine that shaped each day. These shared reflections formed a kind of global heritage of undersea service, and as new generations joined these fleets, they inherited not only advanced technology, but a deeper, quieter understanding of what it meant to live and work beneath the waves. As the role of nuclear submarines continued to evolve, environmental awareness became an increasingly important part of their mission. Early vessels had focused primarily on strategy and endurance, but modern submarines also carried instruments that monitored the state of the ocean. Sensors quietly recorded temperature, currents, and changes in water chemistry as the ship traveled through distant regions. This data helped scientists study long-term trends, revealing how the ocean responded to shifting climates and natural cycles. Crews learned to interpret these subtle signs as part of their routine. A gradual cooling of water hinted at deep currents rising. A small increase in salinity suggested the influence of faraway seas. Even the behavior of marine life provided clues. The presence of certain species revealed migratory shifts, while changes in whale songs suggested alterations in breeding grounds. Though the submarine's purpose remained strategic, it often served as a witness to the ocean's broader patterns. Environmental care extended to operations within the vessel. Engineers designed modern reactors to produce minimal waste and operate with exceptional safety. Hull coatings were chosen to avoid harm to marine ecosystems. Noise reduction, once pursued solely for stealth, also reduced disturbances to sea life. These efforts reflected a growing understanding that the deep was not simply a place to pass through, but an environment deserving of respect and protection. Submariners themselves often developed a quiet appreciation for this world. Hours spent listening to sonar created a sensitivity to the ocean's rhythms. Many could distinguish the tone of a whale call from the rumble of a distant storm or the faint tapping of shrimp along the seafloor. These sounds formed a soundtrack of life beneath the waves, reminding crews that they shared the deep with countless living creatures. Occasionally, patrols brought submarines near regions of ecological significance. Coral reefs, though far above their depth, influenced currents that touched the hull. Underwater volcanoes released minerals that drifted through the water column. Migrating animals appeared in waves, their echoes passing across sonar screens in graceful sweeps. These moments offered glimpses into ecosystems rarely seen, deepening the sense of wonder that accompanied long journeys. Over time, this awareness influenced both design and policy. Submarine operations began to consider environmental impact as carefully as strategic requirements. Nations collaborated on research using data from patrols, contributing to studies that mapped global currents and monitored ocean health. In this way, submarines served not only as guardians of stability, but as quiet observers helping humanity understand the vast hidden world beneath the surface. As we approach the present, nuclear submarines remain central to global security, yet they continue to embody a sense of calm endurance shaped by decades of refinement. Modern vessels carry advanced systems capable of sensing the environment with remarkable clarity, but the essence of their mission remains rooted in patience. They travel slowly through the deep, maintaining a constant readiness that reassures allies and steadies uncertain moments. These patrols follow quieter rhythms than most imagine. A submarine may spend days drifting in a thermocline, adjusting its depth only slightly to follow subtle changes in water density. Crews monitor instruments with steady focus, watching for patterns that reveal the shifting landscape around them. Long periods of silence are not unusual. They are part of the vessel's natural pace, shaped by the deep's gentle pressure. Inside, life continues with familiar routines. Modern systems may ease daily tasks, but the structure of life aboard remains timeless. Watches rotate, meals are shared, and conversations fill the small pockets of free time. The mess deck remains a gathering place where sailors exchange stories or reflect on home. Even with technological comfort, the crew relies most on cooperation and trust, the same foundations that guided submariners for generations. Advances in communication allow occasional contact with the surface, but these exchanges remain limited to preserve stealth. Messages arrive as short bursts of text, offering updates from command or quiet notes from family. Though brief, these words brighten the atmosphere aboard, reminding the crew that the surface world continues on its familiar path. As submarines travel through the deep, they move between layers of water with distinct personalities. Cold, dense zones offer concealment, while warmer layers carry sound differently. Sonar reveals distant activity, a migrating whale, a passing ship, the muted echoes of underwater terrain. Each sound becomes part of the vessel's awareness, shaping decisions with gentle precision. Despite operating at the forefront of strategic capability, submarines remain humbled by the ocean. The deep is vast, timeless, and indifferent, reminding crews that their presence is temporary. This understanding lends a sense of perspective to every patrol. Submariners speak of the ocean not as a barrier, but as a companion whose moods and rhythms guide their journey. Through this partnership between human skill and the quiet strength of the sea, nuclear submarines continue to serve their enduring purpose. They provide stability not through confrontation, but through presence, moving calmly beneath the waves, unseen yet always prepared, offering reassurance to a world that relies on their silent vigilance. As our journey through the deep comes to its quiet conclusion, we return to the idea that first carried us beneath the waves, that nuclear submarines, for all their complexity and purpose, are shaped as much by silence and patience as by technology. From those early post-war designs to the modern vessels that travel the oceans today, each submarine reflects decades of learning about engineering, certainly, but also about the calm discipline needed to move through a world defined by darkness, pressure, and stillness. These vessels glide through regions few people ever see, guided by the soft curve of sonar echoes and the steady hum of machinery. They drift along underwater slopes, pass through thermoclines that bend sound in gentle arcs, and listen to the deep chorus of whales, storms, and distant shifting currents. In these quiet spaces, the ocean becomes both companion and guardian, holding each vessel in its vast embrace as it carries out its long, deliberate patrols. For the crews who serve aboard them, life in the deep becomes a rhythm of its own. Hours blend softly into one another, guided by watches, shared meals, and small moments of reflection. Letters from home brighten the stillness. Simple laughter in a narrow corridor softens the weight of long patrols. And through it all, a sense of purpose gently accompanies the crew, the understanding that their presence helps maintain a fragile balance far above the waves. When a submarine eventually ascends and the first faint traces of light begin to filter through the water, the transition feels almost dreamlike. Pressure eases, the vessel's sensors adjust. The ocean's quiet begins to give way to the world of wind, sky, and distant human activity. Yet the calm lessons of the deep remain with the crew. Patience, awareness, and the knowledge that stability is often preserved not through force, but through silent readiness. As sailors step onto land again, the memories of the ocean linger, the subtle tones of sonar returns, the gentle vibration of currents along the hull, the soft, steady companionship of the deep. These impressions become part of a lifelong connection to a world few ever experience, a world shaped by silence and illuminated by purpose. Tonight, as we rise slowly back toward the surface of our own thoughts, we carry with us that same quiet understanding. Beneath the oceans, far from sight, vessels continue their calm journeys, offering a steady reassurance to a complex and unpredictable world. And here, at the edge of sleep, We let their rhythm guide us into rest, drifting into stillness with the soft patience of the sea. Good night.